My name is Ryan LaFollette, and this is the I Am IUN Oral Project. I'm here today interviewing Dr. Jonathyne Briggs, and we are here to talk about his experience here at IUN. Dr. Jonathyne Briggs, do you give me permission to record the interview?
Absolutely, Ryan. Thank you.
All right, and today is November 26th, 2024, and let's begin. So, tell me, Dr. Briggs, about your upbringing and where you're from.
Sure. I grew up, I was born and raised in Virginia Beach, Virginia. I was the son of a chief petty officer in the United States Navy, so traveled around a bit, but uh, I was the last of his children, so he was kind of settling down, starting to approach retirement age at that point. But grew up there in a very sort of standard middle class type environment then. Interesting fact is that NBA legend David Robinson also lived on my street and was like buds with my older brother.
Really?
Who, of course, he himself went into the Navy, as did my brother, as there was the expectation for me to go in. But we can certainly get to that. And I was there until I was about 11 years old, and then transferred. Parents were transferred to the naval base in Jacksonville, Florida, where that's kind of where I ended up for a large part of my life there. Went to high school there. And it was very interesting how, coming from Virginia, it was still very different. The high school I went to was named after like a Confederate officer, and it was very common at the time as a reaction to desegregation in the South to, put these names onto high schools and junior high. So that was sort of the environment I grew up in. My school mascot was the Rebel. So yeah, so it was very kind of quite in your face about it. But yeah, so I went to high school and was in, not into sports as you can probably tell, but I did the newspaper and did all the kinds of like academic type clubs and drama and things like that. But I was not sure what I wanted to do afterwards. There was always this expectation that I would go to college. It was kind of common then to say like, okay, well, my parents didn't go to college, so the expectation was I would go to college. My siblings didn't make it to college, so I was sort of the last one left, right? So like the last hope, if you will. But I got to college. I started at community college because I didn't know what to do, and it took me a long time to figure it out. By the time I started in college, it was the late '80s and the '90s, and economy was booming, and the Cold War was ending, so like people seemed more hopeful. So there were jobs out there to be had where I could make really good money, and so it was very difficult to kind of stay focused on college. And I found myself, going for a semester here, going for a semester there, and then leaving to go, make good money. I was in marketing at the time, actually, when I was doing that. So, I kind of bounced around in colleges for a while I was working my way through this career. But I got older, I got married, I started a family, and I realized like I kind of needed something pretty solid to fall back on in case, if I lost this job, like what kind of credentials did I have? So I finally knuckled down and finished my bachelor's degree. And I laugh about it, but I started my bachelor's degree while I was still in high school. I was like kind of an overachiever, but then it took me 12 years to finish it. So like I kind of, lost all of my goodwill there. But yeah. So that's how I ended up in school in Florida. I just kind of stayed there because there was work there. So, but while I was there, some of my professors kind of took an interest in me. I figured I would be like a high school history teacher because I remembered I really liked the teachers I had in history in high school. I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. But some of the professors took an interest in me and said, have you thought about graduate school? And being the first in my family to really finish college, I didn't have any idea what grad school was, but I was like, well, how do you do it? And so I managed to get into a really good grad school, which was Emory University in Atlanta. So I started this slow trek northward, right?
I see.
And the funny thing is, it only took me 5 years to finish my PhD, going with a master's included. So I think it's that thing of once you figure something out, like, and you know kind of what you're doing, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I'm sure with age as well and with more wisdom and like you said with your family and everything like that, I'm sure you kind of were, set on what you wanted to do and you can really hone in on that.
Yeah,
I
I
imagine.
mean, yeah, kind of unlike a lot of my colleagues in grad school who were, sometimes 6, 7, 10 years younger than me.
Mhm.
Um, like, yeah, I knew, like, okay, well, I got to make sure I get a job. I got a family to take care of. So
Absolutely. Yep.
it kind of kept me focused there. And then when I finished, I was able to go back to my alma mater and teach there for a year as a visiting, and that was a great experience. Being able to kind of give back, and then and then that was only for a year, so I was out looking for jobs, and I had actually got a job in Scranton, Pennsylvania, of all places, um, at a private school there. But before I signed that contract, I got a call from IU Northwest to say, would you be interested in interviewing for this job? This kind of thing never happens anymore, by the way, but I feel like I got very lucky. And I interviewed with them, and it went great. And they flew me out here over spring break in 2007. There was nobody on campus. There was snow everywhere, and I was like, okay, is this going to really be the place for me? But the people who I met in the history department were just lovely people, and we got along, smashingly. And so I had a choice, and I chose to come here, and I'm very grateful for that. Um, so yeah, so in a sense, like it was either here or Pennsylvania, but both
Yeah.
in kind of the Rust Belt cities
Mm.
of the North. So I felt like here would be the better option, and I think that's really played out for me. So
Absolutely. So you mentioned once you kind of made that decision, what were your first couple years at IUN like?
well,
Did it cement that decision for you, or were some rocky roads along the
sure.
way?
I mean, in sort of the first year I was here, it was a real learning experience, and back then my department was housed in Tamarack Hall, which is now Tamarack Green, just a lovely green space there. And in the fall of 2008, there was the flooding of the Little Calumet River and the Calumet River, which uh, basically closed down our campus for weeks. And I was, sort of puzzled because I wasn't sure what to do. So one of the things I did was I asked for my classes to meet me at the Lake County Public Library. I
Really?
set up a room there, and I was teaching. I think I was teaching a course on like World War II. So
Mm.
I said, just come here, and I was drawing on paper instead of
Yeah.
the chalkboards, but it was good. We were able to kind of keep rolling. We didn't have online education then, so
Mm.
like we were. Uh, and unfortunately, my class made me join Facebook at the time, which was this new thing back then. But it was good because it allowed us to communicate.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
So I guess I could see the coming of online education in many ways. But I lament losing. I had this awesome office in Tamarack, and
Uh,
Tamarack, of course, was condemned afterwards because it was environmental hazard. So I ended up moving around campus a whole bunch trying to find. They would just put me in office here or there and move me around. But so we were a vagabond department, but it kind of taught me to kind of think in these different ways, and like make sure to be resourceful with the things that we had. And I think that it really helped me to connect with students as well, because they were kind of in the same boat where they were trying to be resourceful, and they were working, and with their time here being disrupted, it's not like they could make different time to come here. Um, so it taught me a lot about the kind of people here at IUN. So that was um, it was a wild experience to think about, but I'm really grateful that it happened.
Absolutely. Now, the first thought that comes to my mind when you mention going to the library with your students, one, very innovative, very impressive, very, that's impressive stuff, truthfully. But I'm curious as to, their retention rate. Was everybody coming? Was it required? I have a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't require it. Like, so I would send them messages on email then to say like, read this, but if you want to get together and talk about it, I've booked us a room at the Lake County Library, which is out there on 30. And I knew it was going to be a challenge for some people because we draw from all across the region.
Of course.
At that time, I lived in Crown Point, so I was trying to think of something that I knew. So I didn't make it required, but the first day I only had like 3 or 4 students, but I told them like if they thought this was useful to tell more students. So kind of we were probably off campus for about 2 weeks. And I would say like by that second week, I was getting 80-90% of the class. So I would say everybody who came, they stuck with the class and they got through it. So not everybody could come, and I did my best to kind of help them too. But I think the big part I was trying to signal to them was like, I'm just committed to this. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I'm here to help you. Right. So whatever I can do to help you. Because, I know a lot of us could have just been like sending off email and,
True. Of course. Yeah.
being at home in our studies with our pipes and whatnot, or whatever professors are supposed to do.
Right. Yeah.
So, but no, I thought, I mean, I got into this job to really to teach college students, so I wanted every opportunity to do it.
Absolutely. I'm sure you were able to convey that to your students. True. I mean, organically speaking, students are going to be drawn to that more, are going to be more inclined to come if they can sense that it's, legitimate or that you really are putting your all into it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's why.
Yeah, I think students can spot phonies. So, I think that, I mean, I hope there aren't many phonies out there, but, there are people who say one thing, but practice another thing. And so I was like, all right, well, I said I'm going to do this, so I'm going to do it,
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, as far as the beginning of your time here at IUN, I mean, that flood, I can only imagine that was as impactful as can be, but did you kind of settle in the next coming years as far as your job, the home life and everything like that?
Yeah. It was a very different time then because, it was before online education. We had a very robust, like night class sort of schedule where, we really catered to, working people by teaching a lot of classes after 5:30. So that and I had come from a situation like that. And I myself, when I decided to finish school, I would go to school at night after working an 8-hour day. So I really gravitated a lot to those students, and always made sure to have that cup of coffee at 3 or 4 in the afternoon, so I could be like absolutely manic by 5:30 and teach my class. But so I really got to settling in on that. It was wild, the sort of first winter where at 4 o'clock it's pitch black, and I was like, I'm not used to this, especially coming from Florida, where it's sunshine all the time. But it really got me committed to those students, and I wanted to get involved in like student clubs, and so I tried to figure out ways of contributing in all the ways that I could. But I was still just a junior faculty member. But the nice thing was that there were lots of students who seemed to be interested in the classes. We always had students from all over the place who wanted to come and take classes. And so I would always ask, like, well, what kind of classes do you want? Like, I can teach these kinds of things. So I always wanted to try to find the things that they were interested in, rather than, well, this is what you're normally going to get. And I think that worked out. I think I was able to generate a lot of interest from students in my intro classes to say, like, I teach on this, I teach on that, and would you be interested in coming and taking class on this? And there's some still classes, like, it's interesting. The first class that I taught here, I'm still teaching it this term as an online class.
Really?
Like it's still drawing students. So it's kind of wild. Like when you are able to reach out to students, they're going to tell you things that likely other students who follow after them are going to want. So it's kind of cool that like I was able to kind of build that and then keep it going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Do you believe that your malleable nature, as far as the coursework and what you're bringing to the table, do you think that contribute directly to the relationships you mentioned earlier with your students?
I mean, I think so. Like, I think, I I was one of those professors who it seemed like people were reticent to come by and see me in my office, and I would be like, no, just come by. Or sometimes I would just email them and say, like, you know, let's go to the lunchroom. You know, we had a much more vibrant lunchroom back then, um, but I think too it was just about, I would stay after and like, hey, you want to talk? Like, I know you probably got a class, but I'll stay 5 extra minutes and we can chat. Or I would make sure to come in early. And I'm a big believer in trying to know something about every one of my students. So I knew their names, and like I often knew like, oh, what's your major? Like, that's great. Here are some things you might do with that major. And I think that, again, that sort of, I was just interested in my students as people, because I knew that if I shared my experience with them, they would probably understand, like, yeah, I get it. I had to work and come to school, and that's really tough. So, if you need a little grace, I understand that, right? And I know that some professors feel like it's all about creating structure, but I feel like we're already within structures. So to me, what was more important was like engaging with the material. And to be honest, if somebody had to go and work like a 10-hour shift, they're not really going to be in a position to like give their all. But if I gave them an extra 2 days, then they could give their all and write something that they really would be proud of. And I think, to me, that's always been the more important thing. So, and I still keep that attitude, because, most of our students are working, and they're taking care of their family, they're taking care of their children. They've got really pressing needs, and learning something about European history is great, of course, I think, but also like making sure that everything else is taken care of, so you can focus on that. I feel like that's the thing that's always important. Finding that balance. So that's not just on them. That's about a negotiation, I've always thought. So,
well, I mean, I could speak for, many students that we would appreciate that immensely,
yeah,
and actively do appreciate that immensely. So, for what it's worth, I'm sure every student you've had would appreciate that.
yeah. I mean,
Without a
and
doubt.
and like, it's funny. Just before we talked, one of my old students I just saw from, I hadn't seen him in a while, but one of my favorite students who I still stay in touch with. And I try to do that, stay in touch with, I still stay in touch with the network of my former students and make sure they're doing well, and, let them know, like, our relationship has changed now. I'm no longer their professor. I'm just someone who cares about their continued success. So that's kind of one of the nice things I always felt about being here, is that you can really build those relationships with students in this very organic way. And it just kind of moves from this like mentorship to like watching them grow and succeed in their life, and like being able to kind of witness it, and like watching them bloom.
Of course. I mean, not only to watch them have success, I know that must feel, great to see everyone, in these formative years, in these years of experiencing all the highs and lows.
Yeah.
But do you feel a sense of, I wouldn't say pride, but that of knowing that you did impact that positively, or at least doing your best to do so?
Yeah. I mean, the fact that students still want to talk to me after they're graduated and done, like, that does kind of tell me like I made a kind of difference. I made a kind of mark. And, I mean, it's one thing where the students might say something nice about me on like, a course questionnaire, right? Like, did you like this class? Yeah, it was great.
5 stars.
That's awesome. But like, 5 stars, right? We all just want to be 5 stars, but it's that like interpersonal thing. And I think that's so key to the experience here, that makes it so different from, something like IU Bloomington, which is its own great experience, but you don't get to know people, I don't think, at least the faculty, in the same way. So I think that's a real positive, and something that I've really appreciated about being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, and even this, right? I'm getting to know more students, even outside of my area, and that's great.
Yeah, I think a lot of that you wouldn't be able to get at Bloomington. Like you said, it is its own, its own experience, of course, and it has all these wonderful things.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, the nature of IUN as a whole, it does contribute to a lot of those, factors that you couldn't really get elsewhere.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right.
Right. Like, and feeling confident enough to know my students so I can write really personalized letters to support them, things like that, that I just feel like if I taught at a bigger school, in fact, the school I came from was much bigger. Like I just had so many students, I couldn't really know them all. And
Okay.
now I don't, I can kind of honestly say, like, I think I know something about every student I teach. So, that's important to me.
Yeah.
So they're not just like a person occupying a desk, but it's like that person wants to go on to pharmacy school, or this person wants to get a master's degree in public history or something. Those kinds of things. It reminds me that this is really not the end, but just sort of helping them to move to that next stage.
Absolutely. Transitionary period.
Yeah,
Without
absolutely.
a doubt. From just this interview alone, it seems like you are completely leading from just a genuine place. It seems like from when you were younger to now, even to the intermediate time during the flood and what have you, it seems like everything is
Yeah.
coming from a place of, genuine care about your students. And it seems like they can tell.
Yeah.
Truly.
Well, and I think it's that thing where, like, I would never ask my students or a colleague something that I wouldn't be willing to do myself, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's, creating classes outside of the classroom. Like, if I'm not willing to do that, how would I expect them to be willing to do that, right? Or, doing the reading. It's like every time it's like, all right, I'm going to read it again too, just so I'm fresh with it.
Yeah.
Even though some things I've read hundreds of times at this point. It's like, you know what?
Yeah.
I still need to know, like, what that experience is like, and like how long it takes to read this, and what are parts of it that I might need to explain again. And so for me, it's kind of leading in that way, where it's like, I'm not in front of you. We're side by side.
Yeah.
Right. We're going together.
Collective, of course. Yeah. And that can make the world of a difference, truthfully, especially in times of hardship. Everything is fine when things are going well, especially, students. Everyone is doing different things, living their own life. But when things are getting difficult, it's comforting to have, a person who's, has a big impact on your life and is in charge of a lot of things, a professor, if you would, but to know that, it feels more like a, relationship with each other than, a weird power dynamic. It helps at times.
Well, and I'm aware of that power dynamic, and like I also am aware that a lot of our students, like, they're coming in and maybe they don't know a lot about college. A lot of them might be first gen themselves. So
absolutely.
I always try to communicate that, like, I understand where you were. I was first gen myself. I like muddled through college. I didn't know what I was going to do. I understand these things. I hope I can be an example that, like, you can always make something of yourself and like find success. And, I'm not saying it's going to be teaching at university, because obviously that's not for everyone, but like, when I was 18 years old, I didn't say like, oh, I'm going to be a college professor, right? I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll do, something that makes me $10 an hour, which was a lot of money back then, right?
Hey, times have changed.
But times have changed for sure. But yeah, I think that a lot of it is about like reminding them that we're here to kind of serve them, the students. Like, I think that's what I want to make sure that they understand, that I'm not here to sort of punish them or like institute some sort of discipline on them. Like, they have to have their own discipline, and a lot of students have their own discipline, right? So I'm not here to be their dad. I'm here to like teach them stuff and teach them how to become a professional, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as far as teaching your students how to be professionals, do you have any moments in your career, if you would, as a professor, that really stick out to you regarding that, or just certain experiences, or even, what have you, that really stick out as far as that really were important to you, or that,
Yeah. I would say, so I remember I was asked to teach a course on the history of the sexual revolution, and it was always a very popular class. You put sex in a class title, like
it's so
it's going, students are at least going to be curious, right? But I remember, like, I had students who came up to me and it's like, I used to never really read for classes, but the stuff you're assigning us is so crazy, like, I have to read it, and I was thinking, like, well, it's not that crazy, I don't think, but it's just that they had never been sort of exposed to a lot of ideas, and telling them all about the history of Indiana University and the Kinsey Institute, and like just watching them get like so interested in like the history of IU itself. It's like that, you know, you're part of this as well. So I remember those experiences. And of course, when I'd hear about students still arguing about things in my colleagues' classes from my own classes, that always made me feel very happy. It's like, you know, colleagues were like, oh, they came in and they were still talking about this book you assigned, and I'm like, well, good, you know, we weren't done, but your class interrupted mine. So, but yeah, I think it's experiences like that where it's like, it came to them and it hit something that they want to keep talking about, you know, and my hope is that they, you know, they're still interested out there, and they still remember these things. I still get people who tell me, yeah, I remember this exact class. And I'm like, that's wild to think about, because you know, I sat in my office and I wrote out a lecture, not really thinking about someone would think about it 10, 15 years later. So it's experiences like that where it's, you know, at times it's kind of humbling. Like, oh, I'm just taking the skills I have and putting ideas together. But when you're able to connect with people again, it's like, wow, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it goes to show, one, you know, you're not always going to be aware of how impactful, you know, your lecture will be to someone, and more so, you're not going to be aware of what they're going to take from it.
Yeah,
I mean, it goes to show that, one, everything you're saying was important. You know, it was vital to them in some way or another, but you know that the things you're trying to instill are getting through successfully.
absolutely.
I know that has to feel nice.
It does, you know. And for a while, back when I was still trying to figure out what to do with my life, you know, I tried to be a gigging musician. You know, I played the bass and I played the guitar, and so like I had a little showmanship in my you know, past. And I'm like, oh well, maybe I can bring some of that here. Like, I'm not going to get up with a guitar and like, you know, talk about like World War II, but like I can kind of bring some of that, like, you know, that sort of energy to the classroom. And so I think that's one of the things where, and at times that's what I miss about being in the classroom. I really just teach online now, so I can't like move around or like interrupt myself and like get people to talk or like make people stand up or, but I think that they appreciated that, where I would like be talking and I'd be like, all right, enough of me talking. Let's stand up and like somebody tell me something, you know. And I think they really appreciated that, because, you know, I'm sure that I know I've been in classes myself as a student where, you know, after a while you just sit back and it's like, okay, I don't want to be passive anymore, you know. And so naturally, that's what I always think about with like music. Like, there are audiences, but they're not passive. They're like moving around, they're dancing, they're shouting, they're clapping, they're singing along. Absolutely. At least those are the things I do at a show. And so like, I tried to bring that into like a classroom setting, and I think it worked to some degree.
It's really fascinating to see or to hear about your musical origin. I mean, one, I can say again, from the student's lens, we do appreciate, you know, when you shake things up in the classroom from the status quo of just a lecture, you know, just, you know, A to B and that's it. We're going to appreciate it. You know, anything differing from that. But it's interesting to see how you directly applied, you know, one of your previous ambitions to your then career, you know, being that it's a night and day difference, of course, but it's
I would say that, you know, a college professor has way more respect than you know, a rock and roll guitarist, right?
Depends on the guitarist.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
I suppose you're right. We're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as that goes, that's very interesting. Now, I'm very curious. I mean, you've had as many experiences as anyone at this university, at this campus. If you had to look back, you know, 20, 30, even 40 years, what are some talking points that you'd want to say to yourself?
You know, I certainly like to think that I've always kind of stayed true to like who I am, even as my roles have changed. Nowadays, I do more administrative work. I don't teach as much as I work in the dean's office in the College of Arts and Sciences, and you know, so I work now kind of more structurally behind the scenes to help students on like larger initiatives. But I'm just trying to, in some ways, reach more students that way. In a classroom, I can reach maybe 30, 40 students. Through these things, I can reach hundreds of students, right? Um, so I would say, like, kind of staying true to that idea of like serving students and engaging with them and trying to find out what they need and what they want, but never from like a position of like condescension where it's like
No.
I know what to do. Like, my expertise is in this sort of one area, um, and I would like to share that. But like the ways of sharing it, I'm always trying to figure out the expertise of doing it, because
Never ends.
students change, right? Like the students who I started teaching, like 20 years ago, are different from the students now, and that's totally fine. And having teenagers at home, like I get that, and that sort of helps me think like, okay, what am I going to be preparing for now? So, but trying to keep that open mind, I think, is something you know, I feel when I look back, like I'm going to be proud of that. And like,
Absolutely.
I didn't become like a fuddy-duddy or a stick in the mud. I'm sure I will at some point, but I haven't as of yet. So I think that's something I'm proud of. Also being recognized by like my colleagues, my peers. Like I've won teaching awards and service awards and research awards, and that's really nice. Like that, all the effort that I've made, has been rewarded and like recognized, and that means a lot to me, because those are things that as a first gen, like I didn't expect these things, and I didn't even know how to start to get things like this. And now to be recognized in those ways is it just kind of connects me that much deeper here.
Thank you for sharing that. I know
Yeah.
it was a vulnerable thing to say.
So
I do appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
Now, for the sake of the possibility that 10 years down the line you're watching this, whether in a nostalgic feeling, an informative, or even a reflective, lens, what do you have to say to yourself 10 years in the future directly?
Again, like, sort of stay authentic.
Yep.
Like, no matter what I'm doing, remember who I'm doing it for, which are the students who come here. Move with kindness, right? Like,
Always.
I feel like kindness really goes a long way here, especially because we're such a small team in many ways, in comparison to like Bloomington, which is a wonderful, huge organization, and they've got like lots of offices, but we're often left to kind of count on each other. So I think as long as we stay true to ourselves, we stay honest with each other. A thing I'm always seeking from everybody is just to earn somebody's trust, and so that takes work. And so I would hope myself in 10 years is still working on that, right? Because that's always that you can, once you gain somebody's trust, you can't just stop. You gotta keep like you got to keep like feeding it, So I think those are the things that, and again, I think that's what resonates with students. Like, if they feel like they can trust you, they will open up to you about their real challenges, and then you can really work together. Absolutely. So I think whether I'm still in administration then, or if I'm just teaching then, I think in all those cases, like staying seeking that trust is like what I hope that hopefully he still's got his hair, but whatever that guy looks like in 10 years, that he's still trying to do that.
Yeah. Again, thank you for sharing. I know that is, as far as the interview, it's very vulnerable. So
yeah, of course. Yeah.
Your thoughts. And
well, IUN is like a home, and it feels like, it's a place that I can be myself in, and there's like not real judgment on that. So, and that's been my experience, and so I want to make sure that everybody kind of has that experience, and I lament those who don't have it, and I want to work towards that for them as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, was there anything that we did not cover today that you wanted to shine light on, whether it be for those who might be listening, or just as far as our conversation, or anything you wanted to talk about as far as IUN and its impacts, or anything of that nature?
I think the thing that I've learned, I've been here now at IUN, this is my 18th year. I think the thing that I've learned the most is it just has this very special bond with this region that we serve.
Absolutely does.
And it taught me so much about the region rats and like who these people are, and like that they've endeared themselves to me, and likewise. And I think that being that sort of that place that the region can go and like uplift itself is something that like continues to bring me back here. Every year, even in years of challenge and years of prosperity, like it's always still been that, at our highest high and at our lowest lows, like it's always still just been about like we're here for the region. And so it also makes me want to bring like everything I can to the region, because they may not, I want to give them every opportunity that anybody who goes to IU should have. So I hope that we continue to do that going forward.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan.
Dr. Briggs, for your time and your thoughts. And I want to thank you for being so candid and open and honest.
Of course.
You didn't have to do that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work you put into this and like your contributions to this as well. So thank you.